Hello everyone! Today we will be covering all of the Halloween decorations I've made for myself this year. All of the DIYs in this video will be based on affordable supplies I've got from everything $1 kinda stores, except this creepy doll that comes from a flea market. I'd like to start with the simplest project I've prepared for you today, and it's skull flowers. I found this idea on Pinterest a while ago, but as usual would like to give it my own twist. At first, I need to make a base for flowers by fixing the skulls on sticks. In the Pinterest version of these flowers, people used petals from artificial sunflowers, but I'd like to make them myself out of fabric. I recently discovered soft sculpture technique for myself, and I really like the shabby chic twist in it. For the petals, I'm going to use a variety of cotton fabrics in different shades of yellow and brown, and I also tried to pick fabrics with different textures, such as some classic cotton, waffle piqué that's usually used for kitchen towels, jersey, and canvas for an extra detail. I sketched petals in different sizes and shapes on canvas with an air erasable pen first, and then put 2 layers of thinner fabric underneath to be able to cut out 3 petals at the same time. The light yellow fabric is not as stable as canvas, so if you want to make bigger petals, it's better to make them out of 2 layers of fabric. People who make textile flowers are often using PVA glue to stabilize petals, but I'm not going for a realistic look today. If you ask me, I really like kitsch with its high contrasts and elements that look out of place. So instead of using glue, I've decided to hand stitch 2 layers of petals together with a contrast thread. For my first petals, I used standard brown threads, but then I've decided to also use some thicker threads in black and white. I thought it would be fun to add some white stitches to the brown petals as well, even though they don't need any additional support. So in the end I've got some plain yellow petals, yellow with brown stitches, yellow with black, and yellow with white. Then plain brown waffle, brown with thin and thick white stitches. Melon jersey and sand canvas, 9 types of petals in general. And then I just hot glue them to the skull. It really puts me in a cozy autumn feeling as I work with all of these leaves, they are so cute. When petals are all set, I cover the back of the skull with dark green waffle fabric. Ta-da! Here come the skull flowers, so cozy! The next project is not though. For the next project I'm going to use this old porcelain doll I've got from a flea market like 3 years ago, I think. And then I didn't know what to do with her, and it's just been laying in the basement up until this moment.
What? I love garbage.
I remember I bought her because she has an unusual face with actual emotion in it. It felt so interesting that I totally forgot that I absolutely hate dolls that look like toddlers, even if they are good quality. Which this one is not. Maybe I don't like babies, but I definitely love plants, so I thought why not to make a mandrake out of it. She is screaming and her limbs are long and thin, which looks a lot like roots. Usually mandrakes are sleeping and they scream only when you pull them out of their pot. I've been thinking how could I implement this in my sculpture, and I came up with such a scenario as if this mandrake grew too big for its pot. So the pot cracked and its feet are cold now, and that's why it is screaming. So for this sculpture I need a broken pot, but I only had a good one. Let's fix this.
Here's Johnny!
Oi. As my mom would say, breaking is not building. Also, I've decided to get rid of the old textile parts of her body, partly because I was curious to find out what kind of stuffing they used in her.
Hello, Amanda. I want to play a game.
It turns out it was just fabric scraps. And then I made her a new body out of foil. When the rough shape is ready, I cover her body with air-dry clay. This clay costs just €2 per package, so I can feel free to use as much as I want. Together with the low price, there is a couple of disadvantages though. This clay shrinks as it dries, so it cracked in a couple of places, and also it doesn't want to stick to smooth surfaces, including porcelain. To be honest, it doesn't even want to stick to itself, so I had to use PVA glue on top of the dry clay to be able to build layers and add more details. Mandrake is not a real plant, so you are free to sculpt features as you feel fit. In the end, I came up with a weird mixture of a potato, carrot and ginger. For example, this texture on top of its head comes from carrot butts, lumpy body is from ginger, and little holes represent potato sprouts. And this is all of the clay I had left in the end. I didn't bother with smoothing up its body too much, because this clay wouldn't blend nicely into the porcelain parts anyway. Pure PVA glue won't help me here either, because it also peels off the porcelain. But what to do? I have an idea. Remember that technique I showed you in my video of making Rani when I was working on her head? It comes to save us once again. Yes, I'm going to cover the whole sculpture with a thin layer of cotton wool mixed with PVA glue. It will blend all of the parts together, and I also can use cotton wool to add more textures and details, like some flexible roots for example. Another good thing is that even if the clay cracks a bit, it won't be visible under a layer of cotton wool. If you ask me, it's a win-win. When the sculpture is dry, I can finally paint the Mandrake with acrylic paint. Just like in any other project, painting is my favorite part. When I paint things, I always hear the voice of Bob Ross in my head. Some people get baptized to get closer to their god, but who needs a god when there are such people like Bob? So this time my inner Bob whispered to me that roots are getting greenish when they get some sunlight. So I am adding a bit of green to the upper parts of the root, which I suppose were well lit. According to the story I've made up, the pot broke just a second ago, so her leg roots will remain brown. I also add some orange for highlights. The Mandrake came out so detailed, but the pot is so boring. No, I can't leave it like this. I've decided to cover it with this structure paste, which is basically just some putty mixed with sand. It doesn't only stick perfectly to the pot, but also to whatever it touches, so you need to be careful when working with it. To imitate ground in the pot, I've got these little stones from a Euro shop. I only used 1/4 of this jar for the whole project. In places where I need accuracy, I glue stones with hot glue. But for the places where I need to use them just as a filler, I mix stones with some semi-gloss varnish. And now I can give the pot some grey wash to make the texture pop and age it a bit. It would be nice to add some moss to it as well, but just some wash looks good already. And the final touch is adding some leaves. I took these from a lily I bought in IKEA. I think this lumpy Mandrake princess came out pretty nice, especially if you put it together with other plants. But I still don't like it because it's a baby. It starts to feel weird, maybe I need to talk to a therapist. The last, but not least, is my favorite project today. On Pinterest I saw people making skeleton fairies out of these skeletons, and I thought, why not to make a collection of mummified fantasy creatures and hang them on the wall like a bug collection. The first creature I'd like to make is a mermaid, so I start the modification with chopping off its legs.
What about their legs? They don't need those.
And I use another skeleton as a bone donor for the tail. The only parts I need from it are the ribs and the spine. I'd like to make the tail look like it has some dried flesh, but in some places the bones will look as if the mermaid was bit. Maybe met a shark? I make the base for the tail out of spine bits I just harvested and some wire. And the fins I make out of plastic beads from artificial leaves. I think they look pretty much like a fish skeleton. Then I make a base for the meaty parts out of foil. Foil is light and it also helps to save some sculpting material. I sculpt the tail using silk clay this time because it's also pretty light. It's really hard to make the surface of the silk clay smooth, but who cares? Dry flesh is not supposed to be smooth. When the clay is completely dry, I paint the fins ivory to match the rest of the bones. And I paint the flesh brown. And while painting, I thought it would be nice to add some more texture and damage to the flesh. Luckily, silk clay is also soft and easy to cut. Now I can finally paint the whole thing. I plan to display my bug collection in these IKEA frames. They are the cheapest frames IKEA has, so there is no passepartout inside. But I don't really care, because I know a good way to make it look like it has one. First, I put watercolor paper in frames and then cover the area which is supposed to be a passepartout with masking tape. I temporarily place the mermaid to see where would be the best place for a label and cover that bit with masking tape as well. When everything that needs to be protected is covered, I start aging the paper with watercolor. When you draw a cube or a rectangle, the most important thing to keep in mind is the corners or angles, because angles create the shape, not sides. So I intentionally paint the corners the darkest. I know you might be like, oh thanks Captain Obvious, but it's actually one of the most common mistakes for beginner artists, that people draw sides really dark but completely ignore the corners. I did that as well when I was younger. I add some more reddish brown paint around the label to imitate old glue. And now that I removed the masking tape, you can see that the dark corners really became the deal breakers. If you look at the picture, it really feels like there is some depth to it. even though in reality it's just a sheet of paper in a cardboard frame. When the watercolor is fully dry, I can finally glue the mermaid in its place, but this is not the end yet. As a final touch, I'd like to add some glitter to her tail to make it look even more like a fish. I think this almost transparent glitter is the best option because it will look more subtle and because it has a teardrop shape. Then I shaded her bones a bit more and finally signed the label. I wish I had better handwriting, but I guess I have to live with what I've got. The next creature in my collection will be a Skeletal Conjurer. In my stock box I had these wings from a Monster High Rochelle doll, and I decided to build something like a demon out of it. In the process of changing its body, it started to remind me of a Skeletal Conjurer, a creature from the very first Divinity game. Unlike the other skeletons, this one had wings, horns, and looked more like a dragon than a human. I remember I really liked that creature. And the game itself. I think after I'm done with all of the October plans, I'll take some time and play that game again. It's a really old game with top-down perspective and kinda reminds me of Diablo games. But what really got me in this game when I was little is that it was the first game I played that had an open world, and there were so many details made just for the aesthetics and interactions with the environment. Lots of side quests, guilds, great storytelling, etc. Could even buy a house. These days we have lots of good games with better visuals and more things to do, but back then it felt really special to me, and it still does. Back then people didn't have as many resources to build games, so I can imagine that the game developers really put their heart and soul into it, and you can feel it as you play. Okay, now I feel old. Anyway, back to the project. So I made really basic body mods using wires and epoxy sculpt, colored everything ivory first, and then painted the horse black to make them more pronounced, and cover up the bed sculpting. Afterwards, I washed the whole skeleton with black acrylics, and he is done. This creature was way easier than the mermaid, but he is my favorite. I think the black wash gives it that really epic demonic look, and I love it. I prepared the frame the same way I did for the mermaid, but placed the label a bit different. Signing the label, and the creature number 2 is ready. Two more creatures to go. Next up is the Moth. Here I used some spare wings from Monster High again, but this time these are gonna be the main part of the piece. I make the butt out of some foam pumpkin and artificial fur. I rarely use hot glue in my projects, because I think it's more suited to quick and easy DIYs, and that's exactly what I'm doing today. Hot glue, your time has come. I didn't want it to be a boring moth, so I used the skull I had left from the mermaid to create a really epic back for it. And the orange plastic wings looked kinda cheap, so I've decided to repaint them as well. I think I've never mentioned this before, but when I first thought about starting a YouTube channel, I wanted to specialize on some dollar store and trash to treasure kinda DIYs. I have lots of ideas and I think I could do really well in it, but I scrapped this idea because first of all I have absolutely no clue what to do with all of the decorations. If I would, let's say, make videos weekly or even once in 2 weeks. And the other question is what to do when there is no seasonal holidays, because that's the only time when I feel really inspired and in the mood to craft something like this. But I think it would be really nice to make such videos sometimes as specials for the most important holidays. If you watched this video till this point, you probably can see if you like this idea or not. So please let me know in the comments if I should make a special video for Christmas as well, or not. Now the moth is done and let's move to the last creature. What is Halloween without creepy spiders, those damn children of Satan? I mean, I really adore and respect spiders, but I don't want them to be close to me. I make spider legs out of wires and yarn and the butt out of the leftover foam pumpkin and fur, just as I did for the moth, but this time I'll brush the fur to make it fluffy. Like the normal skeletons I used before, I've got similar ones but in black color, and I took 3 skulls from them. I cut the backs of their heads off and glued them to the spider butt. And I also add a big black gem in between because I feel like something is missing in there. And some smaller gems to his head for eyes. You may not see them from far away, but if you look up close, you might even start feeling watched. Tell me which creature is your favorite. I think I still like the Skeletal Conjurer the most, but I'm really happy to have all of them on my wall as a set. I wish I had more time to make even more creatures for this collection. Maybe next year? I still have so many ideas, I wish I had more time to make them all. Even this video came out so long already. Thank you very much for watching and spending your time with me today, I really appreciate that. As usual, if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe if you are a new kid, nice to meet you. Also, don't forget that you can buy me a coffee if you would like to support the channel further. There is currently a competition and you will be in for a chance to win a custom doll commission. Each coffee equals 1 entry. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!